And news overseas, it was a huge step forward towards clinching the GOP nomination for the November presidential polls, and yet prohibitive favorite and former and 45th President Donald J. Trump was livid in his victory speech, spewing verbal salvos at Nikki Haley, U.S. President Joe Biden, and the Democrats. For Nikki Haley, the much closer gap in the New Hampshire primary results has fueled hopes and campaign contributions for the next primary in her home state, South Carolina, where she ironically trails in the polls, but may pull off a huge surprise with a full month for stumping in the state. With this victory, political experts and pundits, to include the White House, are prepping for the big showdown the American electorate doesn't want to see. Yet one thing is for sure, the November elections will showcase the most polarized and partisan Democratic exercise in the home of the brave and land of the free that could have an even worse fallout than the failed takeover of the Capitol building in January 6, 2021. Former President Donald Trump has swept to victory in the second contest of the Republican primary process in the United States. VOA's Chris Casquejo is live on the ground in Manchester, New Hampshire. Chris, good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you here at PTV News Tonight. It is very exciting to hear your thoughts today and your observations. First off, what do we know about the final results and what put Trump over the top in New Hampshire?
Well, we can give you the latest numbers out of here in New Hampshire. 92% of the vote is in, and Trump is leading Haley by a 54 to 43 margin, an 11-point margin. And really what put him over of the people who voted for Trump say those were their top issues. Now, Nikki Haley tried to position herself as a moderate, but it really didn't work, even though New Hampshire has a more moderate electorate than most of the states that are coming up in the Republican primary.
Political analysts have called New Hampshire the last stand for former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. She is deemed as the only choice left to Trump in the Republican Party. Sadly, she lost. But what would she do now? What are your thoughts?
Well, she says she's going to battle on in the next couple of primaries, which are her home state of South Carolina and Super Tuesday, where 16 states will be having their nominating contests. But Haley, frankly, faces an uphill battle. She's polling behind Trump in her home state by 30 points, and the senator in the state of South Carolina, Tim Scott, whom Haley appointed to his seat several years ago, has backed Donald Trump. You know, he was also running for president, Tim Scott, but he has decided to back Donald Trump, as have his former Republican contenders, Vivek Ramaswamy, and former Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Chris, the New Hampshire primary results is making it crystal clear of a very interesting rematch. To be quite honest, poll by poll since last year, people have been very honest that we do not want to see a Joe Biden-Donald Trump rematch. So what would you think would be next after this? What would lead to, what would you think is the next step?
Well, it's just a reflection of how polarized the American electorate is. Republicans who back Donald Trump say immigration and the economy are their top issues. But President Biden is going to try to shape this race as a struggle for democracy and the soul of the nation because of what happened on January 6th. And also, abortion rights here in the United States are a big factor since Roe versus Wade was overturned in the Dobbs decision in 2022. In fact, in the 2022 elections, in every subsequent election, the red wave that was supposed to happen didn't materialize, and Democrats performed well up and down the board. Even though they lost control of Congress, the margin was a lot less than experts thought it would be. Yeah, well, moving back to Nikki Haley, do you think that she can drag this race on beyond Feb 24, or is South Carolina her little bighorn and hopes of extending the duel is just perhaps prolonging the agony? Well, it just depends on whether she can close, what appears to be a 30-point gap in her home state. Certainly, she did better than a lot of observers expected in New Hampshire, where they were expecting a 15 to 20 point spread, and right now it's 11 points. So if she can close the gap to single digits in the upcoming primary in South Carolina, maybe she has an argument that, yes, she should move on to Super Tuesday, and she can, sell her donors on that and the voters in the subsequent primaries throughout the spring. But it's really an uphill battle for her because New Hampshire had a very moderate electorate, and 322,000 of the voters in New Hampshire identify as undeclared, but they were able to vote in the Republican primary if they so choose. And Haley won a majority of them, but she still didn't take the state. So it really looks like an uphill battle for her at this point.
Chris, one of the interesting exit poll questions in the New Hampshire primary was on voters' take on Trump's fitness for the presidency. Should he be convicted of one or all of his pending criminal and civil cases? And a whopping 2/3 said he surely is. In fact, even Nikki Haley said she would vote for Trump even if he's convicted. Now, do you think the Republican Party has absolutely turned MAGA for good?
Well, the Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump. The results in New Hampshire seem to bear that out. And you look at some of the Republicans who have opposed Donald Trump, they've either retired or been voted out of office. Representative Liz Cheney, Senator Mitt Romney, Representative Adam Kinzinger, who served with Liz Cheney on the January 6th committee. So it doesn't seem that the Republican voters or the Republican electorate have an appetite for anybody who isn't Trump or anybody who opposes Trump. But the big question is, how will he fare in a general election? His candidates and the people that he backed, like Carrie Lake in Arizona, who was a famous election denier and very staunch ally of Trump, she lost her race for governor.
These are crucial times for the American people. Thank you, Chris Casquejo, for your time from Voice of America News.